Broadcasting from the beautiful state of Maine, welcome to another episode of the Learning from Leaders podcast, the show that focuses on identifying and developing the skills and behaviors that will inspire, empower, and compel others to follow your lead. Listen as Patrick's guests talk about the powerful leadership approaches they have identified and developed, which are vital for leading in today's challenging times. These are the same approaches that will positively impact you as a leader too. Learning from Leaders provides the right balance of leadership research with real-world scenarios, making it easy for you to rise above your best. All right, let's start the show.
Hey everybody, I'm Patrick Veroneau. Thank you for joining me on another episode of Learning from Leaders. And if you are an entrepreneur, this is an episode you're definitely going to want to stay tuned for because my guest is Laura McDowell, and we're going to talk about her role as an implementer for what's called the Entrepreneurial Operating System, or EOS. It was designed by a successful entrepreneur named Gino Wickman, and we're going to be talking about his book, Traction, which has sold over 1 million copies, and it really, to me, coming into the new year, is a great opportunity if you're looking at ways to fine-tune your business or set up an operating system. This book really nails it. So let's get into it. Laura, thanks so much for being on the podcast today. I had an opportunity, as I just mentioned when we were talking before, of not only listening, but also reading the book at the same time. I felt like I was a first grader, sort of going page to page. And I will tell you, I loved this book. I thought it was so well written, and it really caused me to think a lot about my own business. And although you didn't write the book, what's called an EOS implementer for this book and this model. And I was wondering if you could start out by talking about what does it mean to be an implementer?
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Patrick, for having me on today. I am really excited to talk with you about EOS, about Traction. So glad to hear that you loved the book. And so you're right, I am an EOS implementer. And so essentially what that means is I am a coach, a facilitator, and a teacher. I work with leadership teams of entrepreneurial companies, and I help them with implementing the EOS system into their business. It stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System, and it's really a way of harmonizing and orchestrating the moving parts of a business. And yeah, so it's really just about helping teams get stronger, get healthier, get clearer on their vision.
Yeah, when I picked up the book or ordered the book through Amazon, and it arrived right across the top, over 1 million copies sold. And I thought, wow, this is pretty impressive. Gino Wickman was the author of it. And the model that he put together, I'm sure for you must be really pretty powerful, you going into organizations. So I was wondering if we could just go through, and I'll sort of add where I have found I've been using it already. And as we come into 2023 especially, I think it's a great time to be thinking about your own business. How do you take some of these tools that are in here and implement them?
Absolutely. It is incredible to think that over 1 million copies of Traction have made their way around there. I'm sure us implementers, the implementer community, has had a lot to do with that. But yeah, I think what I love most about it is that, as you said, Gino put this together after his own personal experience as an entrepreneur, working with lots of entrepreneurs. And I think one of the things that's so great about it that really resonated with me is the fact that it's real world practical tools and disciplines. It's not like anything crazy that he invented. These are things that have been around for 100 years. They'll be around for 1,000 more. And that's what I really love about it. It's real, it's simple, and it works. So
yeah, it's almost like it's an operating system, it seems like.
Exactly. Instead of like the operating system you have for your Mac, it's the operating system you have for your people.
Yeah. So why don't we start out with vision?
Okay.
It's an important one.
Yeah. So vision is the first of what we call the 6 key components of your business. So that EOS model is made up of the 6 key components that have been identified, where we say, if you can strengthen each of these components in your business, you'll find that a lot of the issues and challenges, things that you come across regularly, they just sort of fall away because they're really just root causes of issues that stem from these areas. So we focus on breaking the business into those 6 components, starting with vision. And so vision is that first component. It's really about getting everyone in your organization 100% on the same page with where you're going and how you're going to get there. Because we know a lot of times that's not the case. And so we really focus on that leadership team, getting you all really crystal clear so you can see it in your mind when you close your eyes. Where is this business going?
Now, it talks about 8 questions as part of developing that vision. What are those?
Yeah, so 8 simple questions. Me as an implementer, I work with the leadership team to help them answer those questions, facilitate those conversations. And so the 8 questions are, what are your core values? What is your core focus? what is your 10-year target? What's your marketing strategy? What is the 3-year picture? What's your 1-year plan? What are your rocks? And what is your issues list? And so we go through that, we answer those questions. And once those questions have been answered, and it's really just about facilitating the answers that are already in the room, right? Like they all already know. It's just getting them to all get it out, getting it so that they can agree on how it's going to be communicated out to the rest of the team. And what I love about the 8 questions is we actually give everybody a tool we call the Vision Traction Organizer. And it's just this simple 2-page document. It's like this simplified entrepreneurial way of strategic planning. The 8 questions are right in there. They put their answers right in this document. You can have it online, you can have it in your hand, and it just makes it so that everyone has easy access to see what it is. It creates clear communication to the organization about all this. And we review it quarterly. So every quarter I get back together with that team and I go, great guys, are we still on the same page with the core values? Are we still on the same page with that long-term goal that you have? And if they're not, then we take the time to get everybody back on the same page because things change. So we're just always keeping that pulse to make sure that that vision is still clear and we're all still in agreement.
Right. And that is also known as the VTO, right?
The VTO, the Vision Traction Organizer. So yes, all the cool kids call it the VTO.
And I can see where your involvement in that is really helpful in terms of just helping people flesh out what are those things. Because I think at first you can look at some of those, like especially the 3-year or the rocks, or I think to have somebody like yourself help facilitate that, it can be really valuable and helpful.
Yeah, obviously I'm a little bit biased, but I will say that I come from the experience of having been on a leadership team that was running on EOS. So that's how I discovered EOS myself. I was on a team, we were hitting some ceilings, we were running into some issues, and we ultimately came across Traction, brought on a professional implementer, and had them help us implement the system and help us run all the different meetings that are part of running on the system. And it was one of the best decisions that we ever made, because having that third-party person who already has the system down pat, there to help us facilitate, we didn't have to worry about learning all of these things ourselves because they were there to help teach us as we needed it and help make sure that we were moving forward, not going down rabbit holes and taking that valuable time to get the answers that we needed to get. So,
and I will tell you, I think that's a great point that you make there too, is that you're not only the implementer, but you are somebody that's been involved with an organization that actually used this. So you speak from firsthand experience. There's almost an additional level of street cred, I guess, when you talk about this, is that you've done this. So much so that you've said, I want to do this for other companies too.
Yeah, exactly. I had been at my previous role. I'd been there for quite a few years, and I felt like I had done a lot of different things, got a lot out of my time there. And I honestly, as soon as we started the EOS implementation process, I would sit in these meetings with our implementer, and I just started saying to myself, like, I want to do what he's doing. I want to be able to sit in this room with other leaders and help them. I honestly think of it almost as like learning to like fall in love with your business again. Like maybe you're out of that startup phase. It was fast, it was furious, it was exciting. And then you get to that point where you have to start doing all of those things that you never really got in place because you didn't need them yet. And that can be really hard for a team to even be on the same page with what needs to happen. And so just watching how the system, how the process transformed our team and our company pretty quickly just got me so excited. I was looking into it fairly quickly after we started the process. So this is just, when I get to sit in a room with a team and help them, I can't believe that I get paid to do this. So
yeah, it really is. I have found it to be just such a great process, just me going through it, reading it. So the next one we talk about is people.
Yes. And so we like to say that you cannot achieve a great vision without great people. And so the problem with the concept of great people is that every organization thinks of great people differently. Like it's a very vague term. So what we do is we really help you figure out what great people look like in your organization. I'm sure a lot of your listeners have read some Jim Collins' Good to Great. One of the concepts that we work with our teams on is the idea of right people, right seats. And we say you've got to have both. And so we work with teams to help them figure out how to use core values, now that we've identified those in the vision component, to really make sure that all of your people are right people. They consistently exhibit your core values. They fit your culture like a glove. And then right seats. We want to make sure that every one of your people is somebody who has the skills, the talent, the ability, the experience, and the drive to be really, really good at their job. And so we do a few different things with you to help you make sure that you've got everything you need to get to the point where every one of your people is a right person in a right seat. And that's what 100% strong looks like in that people component.
Yeah. And I love that too, because I think of work done by like Marcus Buckingham or around Gallup is that when people are in the right seat, they show up in a different way, I would guess. It's not just about the right people about it. The right seat is I'm doing things that I really enjoy doing and I'm good at. I think that to me is when I hear that, that's what I think about.
Yeah, 100%. And I think I've been in the situation where I've been at a company where I love the company, I love the clients, I love my coworkers, but I just feel I'm not doing the thing that I'm able to give my best at, that I'm not the right person. It's like you start to learn that concept through EOS and it's like the light bulb comes on and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I remember when I was a wrong seat. And that's really, really hard. And it's really hard for leadership teams because we like to say that, especially in a for-profit organization, we can't keep people around just because we love them. So if we can find a right seat, awesome. And if we can't, we got to make the decisions that are going to help us for the long-term greater good of the company.
Yeah. I can honestly think myself of when I was the wrong person too.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
It happens.
So next we move on to data. And one of the things you talk about there is the scoreboard or scorecard. And I think that's so important.
It is. And I know data is like one of those areas when I talk to teams, a lot of them will say like, this is an area we know we're weak in. Like we have not been great at staying on track with this information. And the way we kind of present data is it's really just about boiling your business down to numbers, facts, figures, objective information. Because in entrepreneurial organizations and even non-entrepreneurial organizations, it's so easy for us to get caught up in egos, emotions, those feelings, that gut. Like I'm like, if I have to hear one more person tell me about their gut, subjective information, that's how we so often make decisions. And we know deep down that's not the right thing to do. So we really try to strip all of that away. And we start by giving the leadership team the ability to come up with 5 to 15 just high level numbers that on a weekly level, they're able to take a look at those numbers and they can feel they have an absolute pulse on the business without getting into the nitty gritty. And then we pair that with 13 weeks of history. So you get to that point where it's kind of built out where you start to really see patterns and trends. So you're not obsessing over things when it's just a one-off week, but when you start seeing things maybe a few weeks in a row, all right, that's something that needs my attention. Let's dig a little bit deeper and figure out what's going on there. But it just helps that team feel like they know what's going on without needing tons of information.
Yeah. And to me, I don't know if you remember hearing that old phrase that says the scoreboard doesn't lie.
Exactly. So when you get to that point where you've got all the right people in the right seats, and everyone in your organization has at least 1 or 2 measurables on a scorecard somewhere in the business, you've got people that feel accountable for helping you stay on track, helping you reach that vision that they're all on the same page with. And you know that when you look at those numbers, they're real. We also say what gets measured gets done. So by having those numbers there, we know people are going to be focused on those priorities.
Yeah. And also you don't get lulled into thinking that you're making progress when you're really not.
Exactly. That busy work. That's one of the tricks with the scorecard too, is like, it takes time to evolve. So we find a lot of times the first time you do a scorecard for yourself, you may realize a couple months in that like, this is not the right number. Maybe I'm hitting it every week, but is it really moving my business forward? And on the other hand, maybe I'm not hitting it every week. And is it really having an impact? Is this actually a number that I need to be focused on? So I think that's one of those things. If you take on that exercise of building a scorecard for your business, I think everyone should have one. Be open to the fact that it will evolve and eventually you'll fall in love with it and find that you're tracking the right numbers.
Yeah. So the next one we move on to is process.
The next one's actually issues, which is a fun one. So we like to say that with those first 3 components that we talked about, your vision, your people, your data, when those become really, really strong, what happens is your business becomes a lot more transparent. And when that happens, you start to see your challenges, your imperfections, impurities, even your opportunities, okay, those become a lot more clear. And so we want to get those out of your head and we get them onto what we call an issues list. So the issues component is really about getting those issues or opportunities out of your head so that you can prioritize them when you have the time, when you mean to be doing that. And we teach you how to get really, really good, not only at prioritizing your issues, but at solving those issues effectively at the root to make them go away for the greater good of the organization for the long term. We know that a lot of teams, even really great leadership teams, struggle when it comes to solving issues at the root. Rarely do they ever identify the root. They wind up just discussing the heck out of it. Sure, you've been in that kind of meeting. And then we walk out not having really solved anything. So we've got some stuff in place to really help you identify those issues, prioritize them, and make sure you're solving them effectively.
When I think of that from the work that I do, it's very much, you've got to have an environment where there's a lot of trust. that these things can be talked about and really we're willing to discuss what this is going to look like going forward.
100%. And I think that's one of the really great things about the entire EOS process is that each of these components, as we strengthen them, we make it so that we are more open and honest as a team. We make sure we've got all the right people, because I think for me, if the right people aren't there, you're never going to have that level of open, honest trust that you need to have really have a truly great team. Like, you go through the motions of everything else, but you need to get to a point where you've migrated all of these tools into the rest of the company. And so that everywhere you look, every single one of your people is comfortable raising their hand and saying, hey, we've got an issue. Great. Where does it belong? Is it a leadership issue? Is it an issue for another team? We get it on that specific issues list. Now we know it's there and we can prioritize it when it's the most important thing for that group of people to focus on.
Yeah, totally. And so what's next then?
So next is process.
Process.
And so process, that's another one where people are like, ugh, it's just not the most exciting topic to talk about. But what I love about process is we say that every business has a handful of what we call core processes. So these are things like your HR process, how you go out and get your people, manage your people, your sales process, your marketing. Maybe you have some operations processes, customer service, accounting, whatever that looks like for you. We figure out what those are. And then we're going to help you document them at a high level. So again, lots of simplification, lots of less is more in EOS. We take a 20-80 approach to documenting those core processes, 20% of the steps that get you 80% of the way there. And then once those are documented at that level, we want to make sure that every single person in your organization that comes in contact with any of those processes is trained, measured, and managed to always do them the right and best way every single time. And so what that does is when you get to that point, it helps you create consistency, scalability. It helps you become more profitable, honestly makes it more fun to manage the business. And so working through that is really, really powerful. And it can really just help kind of skyrocket your business. Again, it adds a lot of that layer of trust, of open, honest, and just makes people feel better at their jobs.
When I was reading that, and I think it's mentioned in there, Michael Gerber in his book, E-Myth, and it talks about really creating a business just like a franchise. To me, when I read that part about process, it is very much about doing something so that I can step away and this thing, somebody else could step in and the recipe is there for this thing to be done, to be replicated. Is that right?
That's exactly right. And it's funny that you say that, because that is something I think when I talk with teams that are considering taking on EOS and implementing it in their business and they want to learn more, a lot of what I hear from them is, I want more time. Like, I started this business and I had this vision in my head of what my life was going to look like. Yes, we work hard. We put in a lot of hours. As owners of a business, we're going to probably work more than 40 hours a week. And that's okay. That's our passion. That's what we love. But on the other side of that, it should feed whatever we want the rest of our life to look like. And I think, again, especially after you get through that startup phase and you've done all of the things, you need to be willing to identify what you don't love to do, what you're not best at, and be willing to hand it off. We call it delegate and elevate. So delegating things off of your plate so that you can elevate to be the best version of yourself. And something like process, something like documenting those core processes and feeling really solid, and knowing that, hey, I've got 20% of the most important steps down. I trust, because I've got right people, right seats, that these people can accomplish this. We've done everything that we need to do. And it gives you that permission to just let go and take that vacation you've always wanted, have Fridays off, whatever, go to your kids' soccer game, whatever that looks like, because you trust your people and you feel confident that they know how to do the things that have to get done.
Which can be a real challenge, I think, for somebody starting a business, that this is their life. This maybe is their first child, so to speak, and that to let somebody else do it, I think you have to recognize that at some point, they may not do it as good as you or the same way you do it, but it's going to get done and done well enough that you can go off and, I guess, elevate yourself to do other things.
Exactly. When you are able to kind of cross over that hurdle, it's like you're going up like a roller coaster, you're going up the top of that hill. And when you get to that top and you're able to hand stuff off and you just feel like you can just release all of that anticipation and anxiety because it's happening. And you know what? What's the worst that happens? Something goes wrong. And so you guys have been measuring it. You know it's off track. We get back together, we figure out what's wrong, we get it fixed, and we go back out there again. Like, it should be fun. It should feel good to run your business. And these are the types of things that help you make it fun again.
Yeah. I had a manager that I worked with once, and his line to the people that reporting to him was, there's probably nothing that you can't break that I can't have fixed by tomorrow morning. And I think it was a great way to give them permission to just do their jobs and not worry about screwing up.
That is so good. I love that. It's like you have these incredible people, and are you actually using them to the extent that you're paying them for goodness sake? Like sometimes you've got these great people with this great experience, and we're just not enabling them to be their best selves and figure out maybe there's even a better way to do this thing.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's get those values in place, get that right structure, find those right people, and the rest of it just becomes so much easier to trust.
Exactly. So the last one.
Last one is traction. Okay. And so we say it's the last one. It's actually at the bottom of the model. So if you were to look at the model, it's a circle. And the top component is vision. Traction's at the bottom. And we say you got to be able to take your vision down to the ground and execute on it with traction. If you can't take your vision down to the ground and execute on it, vision without traction is hallucination. Unfortunately, the vision component of a lot of entrepreneurial companies doesn't get realized because of weakness in the traction component. And so what we want to do is be able to help you take control of your business and stay focused on the most important priorities in that shorter term. So vision is that sort of longer term, big picture. Traction is where we take it down to the ground and really execute more regularly. And so that's where we get into what we call creating a 90-day world for your organization. And so this, again, not a new concept. You've seen those like 12-week year and like 90-day sprints and stuff like that. And there's a reason that those concepts are popular. It's because as people, we struggle to sustain that motivation and that focus for much more than 12 weeks, 90 days. And so we admit that and we embrace it. And so we help you create what we call rocks. And so your rocks are really just 90-day business priorities. You have rocks for the organization, the most important things that have to happen at the company level, and then rocks for every single one of your employees. And so this way, every quarter, what it looks like is you are running like heck in your business. We stop to come up for air. We look back at how did we do on all those rocks? Did we hit our goals there? How are we at predicting, which is a big part of running a great business? We review that vision again. We say, are we still on track with that vision? Anything we need to change? Once we're all on track with it, we're all on the same page. We set new rocks for the next 90 days. We go back into the business and execute. And so all of that is just going to help you lead up to making sure that that 1-year plan gets hit, making sure that that 3-year picture gets hit, making sure that that long-term 10-year target, whatever that time frame looks like for you, we're on track for. Within that 90-day world, one of my favorite parts is the meeting pulse and helping teams run their weekly meetings on what we call the level 10 or the L10 meeting agenda. And this agenda is designed to, especially at the leadership team level, make sure that that precious time your leadership team spends together every week is effective, it's efficient, it's valuable. There's real value coming out of that meeting every single week. And that includes checking in on your scorecard, having some weekly accountability to-dos, making sure those rocks are on track to be hit at the end of the 90 days. And it's really is just so powerful to get that team together for 90 minutes every single week, focusing on their business instead of in their business.
It seems almost as though that could be counterintuitive for some that are like, we don't have time to have another meeting, but this is a different kind of meeting. This is really very structured. As I read it, whether it's the 90-day, the monthly, or the weekly, it's have the same meeting agenda, meet at the same time for the same amount, don't go over, finish when you say you're going to finish. And I think that's what a lot of people dread about going to some meetings. There's no structure to it. There's nothing that's going to be accomplished. They run over. There's a system here, once again.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things I think is really cool about the meeting pulse and the level 10 agenda is that when I start working with clients, the very first full day that I spend with my leadership team is called Focus Day. And I teach them that level 10 agenda right in that meeting. And we set what is your level 10 meeting going to be every week. It's going to be meeting pulse, same day, same time, same agenda. We start on time, we end on time. So before they leave that day, they tell me, yep, we are going to be meeting on Mondays at noon. So noon to 1:30 every Monday. The only reason you don't come to that meeting is if you are on vacation, take your PTO, or you're dead. So otherwise, everyone comes to that meeting. It is a huge priority. And it cuts down on all those other little extra side meetings that make you feel like you don't have time to have this meeting. It's a beautiful thing.
One of the last things that I had, as I was going through and finishing up the book, the last chapter was around pulling it all together. And it gives a 20-question checklist.
Yeah. So we actually have, and this is something anyone can take this right on the EOS website. It's called the Organizational Checkup. And so it's interesting if you take it before you've really dove into EOS, it can be a little tough to wrap your head around what each of the questions are referring to, but it's a great way to kind of take a pulse on where your business is today. As I mentioned earlier on, when I work with teams, we're on a journey to strengthen those 6 key components. And we actually measure using this organizational checkup and really just having these conversations, facilitating conversation with the teams around how strong are you on a scale of 0 to 100%. And so as we go through the journey, I take that pulse to figure out where they are. Where were you when you started? Where are we now? And our goal is to really get you 100% strong in each of those areas, knowing like that's never going to happen, right? Perfection's not going to happen. That's utopia. My goal is to help support you to get to at least 80% or better. And we say we know most organizations, they operate at like 20%. So we want to get you to 80% or better in each of those areas so you can really, truly run a better business and live a better life. Have that life where you're taking vacations, you're doing the things that make you happy, you're feeling confident in your business. And so having this organizational checkup is a great way to really assess where everybody in the organization thinks that you are, because you may not all be on the same page, probably not. You'll find that you get different scores in each of those areas to start. And that alone can facilitate really great conversation amongst your team.
And to me, that whole concept of you don't have to get to 100. Anything, if you're at 80%, you're a rock star. Like your organization's really doing well. And I think that gives people permission to say, okay, we don't have to be all things all the time.
Exactly. And we always celebrate progress. I mean, if you're at 20% when we start and we get to 35% at Q1, I mean, we're going to have a party because it's work. I said before, it's simple. These things are all simple, but they are not easy. And it does take a commitment. I want to make sure that people are committed mentally to, typically the average client stays on with an implementer about 2 years to go through the implementation process and then have an implementer help you with your quarterlies and your annuals to make sure that you feel really strong, you've mastered those tools, and you're comfortable with running the process in the business. And so really that goal is just get you to 80% or stronger at that point. Like my goal as a coach is not to dig myself deeper into your business. It's to get you what you need, get you really strong, and then get the heck out of your way. And so, yeah, that's what this whole journey is about, getting you to that 80% or better.
Yeah. And most things are work. I mean, if you're going to improve, it's going to take work. If it was that easy, everybody would do it. Intellectually, people get this. And to me, it's like the work that we do as coaches is that it's not the intellectual that's going to get you there without doing the work. Reading about push-ups, you're not going to get stronger unless you go to the gym. You've got to do both.
Exactly. And I think that we start this whole thing by making sure everybody's 100% on the same page with what the process is going to look like. Make sure that you all feel like this is the right thing for you. There's other business operating systems. EOS is not for everybody. And so that's why it's really important to me to make sure people feel comfortable with that process and that this is the one they want to commit to. We run on one process. It's going to help your business. You're going to get stronger. So
What would you say is the biggest challenge for organizations that you're dealing with right now? Is there one?
Yeah, for sure. I think to me, the biggest thing is really that people part, because it can be really tough to have those open, honest conversations when you kind of know that you may not have all the right people in the right seats. A lot of teams are going to come into this, and on the other side of it, their team is going to look different. Whether there's a different structure, maybe not all those same people will be sitting there. And that's really hard. We really put a lot of pressure on ourselves to be tied to our titles and our roles in a company. And when I'm here, when I come in the door and I'm like, hey, we're going to pull all the people essentially out of the seats and we're going to make sure you have the right structure first. And that structure might not include the title that you have today. We don't talk about titles in EOS. We talk about functions. What's the seat that's needed at this business? What do we need the structure of this business to look like to get you to the next 6 to 12 months? So if your current title is not on there, are you going to have a seat at this level? And that can be really tough. And it can take some time, but as you get stronger, as you get more into the process, you also find a lot of times people self-select. They realize they're no longer a right person, right seat, and things start to fall into place. So I think it's really that. It's being comfortable with your team, being willing to have those open, honest conversations. And I'm sure you feel the same with your clients is I want people that are coachable, people that are open-minded and growth-oriented and know that there's work to do. We say at EOS, like one of our core values is grow or die. Like we're always growing. We're never going to be done.
Yeah, I will tell you, I really enjoyed just reading the book. So I'm sure having an implementer as part of that role within an organization is even better, because for me, just in the reading that I did, I went back and as I mentioned before we started, just looked at my own values. What are my values within the organization? And there was an energy level to that when I revamped those in terms of where am I going with what I do. It just increased my drive on some certain things. So I'm sure if I'm seeing it in just that short period of time, I can only imagine what a business gets out of this as well.
Yeah. And I think I'm a solo entrepreneur myself. I'm a franchisee of EOF. This is my own business and I use all the tools myself. So I know sometimes we talk about, does a person alone need all of this stuff? But it's really, really helpful. And I reference these things often. I know a lot of super small businesses or solo entrepreneurs that read Traction. Just they read it every year. They have notes in the margins and just remind themselves about certain things that they maybe let slide over the year. And it can be really, really valuable.
So Laura, if somebody wants to reach out to you to find out more about your role or how they can work with you, how should they do that?
I do have a website that you can go to get more information. Contact me right through there. And that's eosworldwide.com/Laura-McDowell. And then you can also send me an email, laura.mcdowell@eosworldwide.com. But I've got all my info up there, tons of free resources if you want to learn more about EOS. Happy to also send anybody a copy of Traction if they want to check it out for themselves. So.
And those will all be in the show notes as well. So I want to thank you for taking the time. I really appreciated this. And once again, I've learned something valuable here for me as well. So thanks for that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Patrick. This was so fun. It was great to chat with you about EOS and the model. So I really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, wishing you all the best for 2023.
Thanks. Same to you.
Enjoy. If you found my podcast episodes or my perspectives to be beneficial in your own leadership development or to the development of your team, I'd love the opportunity to have a discussion with you about how the approaches that I outline in my book, The Leadership Bridge, how to engage your employees and drive organizational excellence, can help you and your organization to attract, develop, and retain the best talent. If that's of interest to you, I would encourage you to reach out to me at patrick@emeryleadershipgroup.com. And that's EMERY, leadershipgroup.com. I hope we have an opportunity to talk and explore how I can help you and your organization rise above your best.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Learning from Leaders podcast. If you've enjoyed the show, please feel free to rate, review, and subscribe on your preferred podcast listening platform. We really appreciate that effort. Until next time, keep rising above your best as a leader.